At 30,000 feet above the clouds, silence can feel heavier than thunder. The world below is hidden under a blanket of white, and the only sound is the hum of jet engines slicing through the sky. On that day, two F-22 Raptors were scrambled for what seemed like a routine intercept. The pilots, sharp and disciplined, locked onto an unidentified aircraft straying too close into restricted airspace. Their orders were simple: make contact, assess the situation, and, if necessary, escort the intruder away. For them, this was another mission, another test of skill and discipline in the unforgiving skies. But something about the way the unknown jet moved unsettled them. It wasn't reckless, yet it wasn't afraid either. It held steady, as though its pilot belonged there, as though no rules or warnings could push it back. The F-22s closed in, weapon systems ready, but fingers tense, waiting for the voice that would come across the radio, and then it did. A calm, steady voice broke through the static, cutting the silence with a weight no weapon could match. The moment the words came through, the Raptors froze, not because of what was said, but because of who was speaking. Training taught them to be fearless, to follow protocol no matter the cost. Yet here they were, two of the world's most advanced fighter jets, suddenly caught in hesitation. Who was this pilot that carried such authority, such recognition, that even the elite of the elite hesitated? Was it an old legend thought long retired? A figure from the shadows of history stepping back into the skies? Or someone whose very name carried secrets that could never be spoken openly? The Raptors held their formation, but the tension in the air grew heavier with every passing second. Orders clashed with instinct, and curiosity burned hotter than the engines keeping them aloft. The radio crackled again, and the voice spoke once more, calm, commanding, impossible to ignore. In that instant, the mission changed. The hunters had become the uncertain, and the skies were no longer theirs alone. What happened next would shake everything they thought they knew. The two F-22 pilots exchanged a quick glance through their visors, though neither said a word. They didn't need to. Both of them had heard the same voice, calm, commanding, and strangely familiar. It wasn't the voice of a reckless intruder or a panicked civilian. This was someone who belonged in the skies. The kind of presence that made even the most advanced fighter jet feel suddenly ordinary. They switched frequencies, hoping for clarity. But the transmission remained steady, almost as if the pilot knew exactly which channel to reach them on. The Raptors tightened their formation, circling the mysterious jet, trying to catch even the smallest detail that might explain who they were dealing with. But the aircraft itself seemed to defy easy recognition. Its design was sleek, its movements precise, almost effortless. It wasn't just flying, it was performing, like the sky itself bent to its will. One of the pilots, a veteran with over a decade in the cockpit, couldn't shake the unease crawling up his spine. He'd been on countless intercept missions, but none had ever felt like this. His training told him to demand identification, to issue a clear warning. Yet every time he reached for the mic, something inside him stopped. That voice replayed in his head, steady and unyielding, as though it carried a history he couldn't see but was expected to respect. Back at the command center, the controllers monitoring the intercept were silent too. The radar showed 3 aircraft locked in a dance above the clouds, but only one of them had managed to disrupt the flow of orders coming from the ground. Whoever was in that cockpit wasn't just another pilot. They carried weight enough to make commanders hesitate, and enough to leave even the Raptors unsure of their next move. The voice came again, softer this time, but no less powerful. It was almost a challenge, almost a warning, and it left one question echoing in the air: what secret was flying at 30,000 feet that even the most advanced fighters in the world couldn't bring themselves to confront? For a long moment, the sky felt frozen, as if time itself was holding its breath. The F-22 pilots kept their positions, watching the mysterious aircraft glide with confidence, its silhouette cutting sharp against the horizon. Everything about it was wrong. It wasn't in their records. It didn't match any known design, and yet it moved with a grace no unfamiliar intruder should possess. The pilots weren't just looking at an unknown target. They were looking at a question no one on the ground could answer. The voice over the radio was calm, almost too calm. It didn't demand. It didn't plead. It simply stated presence, as though the pilot had every right to be there, 30,000 feet above restricted airspace. The younger Raptor pilot found himself gripping the controls tighter, his heartbeat louder than the hum of the engines. Whoever this was, they weren't afraid. And in a world where fear kept even the boldest in check, that made them dangerous. In the command center, analysts scrambled to cross-check the audio. The voice triggered alerts, old files buried deep. In archives, there was something hauntingly familiar in its tone, something that carried weight beyond standard protocol. Yet nothing on the screens explained why seasoned commanders now sat in silence, staring at the radar feed as though they were watching a ghost return. Up in the cockpit, the veteran pilot thought back to the stories whispered among aviators. Legends of names erased from records of missions never spoken about in daylight. A handful of pilots had flown into history and disappeared without explanation. Some said they had been retired. Others said they had walked away. But none ever expected to hear one of those voices again, especially not here in their own skies. The mysterious jet held its path, steady and deliberate, as if daring the Raptors to make the first move. But neither pilot moved. The silence stretched. And with it came the heavy realization that they were facing more than an intruder. They were facing the return of something they weren't prepared to confront. The tension in the cockpit grew heavier with each passing second. The kind of silence that could break a person before a single shot was ever fired. The Raptors flanked. The mysterious jet, their sleek wings glinting in the sunlight. Weapons armed, but pilots frozen by hesitation. Every instinct screamed for them to act, yet the weight of that voice still echoed inside their helmets. It wasn't just the word Z, was the authority. Whoever was in that aircraft had flown these skies long before them. And somehow, they both knew it. The command center broke through the frequency again. Their voices sharp, issuing orders to demand identification. But the mysterious pilot didn't wait to be asked. Instead, the calm voice cut through the static once more. This time with words that sent a chill down every spine listening on the ground and in the air. It was a reminder, a statement that hinted at knowledge buried deep within military history, something not meant to be spoken aloud. The younger Raptor pilot's stomach nodded. He glanced at his wingman, but even through mirrored visors, he could see the same question burning in his partner's mind. And then the jet moved. Not wildly, not threatening, but with precision and speed that seemed impossible. It broke formation, slicing through the air with a maneuver that made the Raptors scramble to keep up. Their radars struggled to lock on, their computers lagging, a fraction of a second behind. It was as if the aircraft itself didn't just belong in the sky, you'd owned it. The veteran's voice cracked through the comms, low and uncertain. This isn't possible. He had seen advanced prototypes trained against simulated threats, but nothing like this. Every move the jet made was flawless, deliberate, designed to prove a point. And then the mysterious pilot spoke again. The words weren't aggressive, but they carried finality. It was a warning line drawn in the sky, daring the Raptors to cross. Engines roared, hearts pounded, and in that instant, both pilots knew they were standing on the edge of something far bigger than an intercept. The next decision would change everything, just as the Raptors steadied themselves. Preparing for whatever came next, the unexpected happened. Another signal lit up their radar. At first, they thought it was a glitch, a faint echo from the mysterious Jets maneuvers. But within seconds, the truth became clear. A second aircraft had entered the airspace, silent, fast, and just as unregistered as the first. The veteran pilot's pulse spiked. This wasn't an isolated intrusion anymore. It was something bigger, and now they were outnumbered. The new contact didn't announce itself. No voice came over the radio. Instead, it slipped into formation alongside the first jet with perfect synchronization. As if the two had rehearsed this moment for years. The Raptors tightened their grip on the controls, adrenaline flooding their systems. Two unidentified aircraft at 30,000 feet, both flying with skill that rivaled or even surpassed the most advanced fighters in the world. This wasn't just a breach. This was a message. Back at the command center, voices rose in panic, orders overlapping. Analysts shouting over one another as the radar screens lit up with the impossible. The words unknown assets and potential prototype echoed across the room. But none of it answered the question that mattered most. Who were these pilots, and why now? The younger Raptor pilot felt sweat trickle down his temple beneath. The helmet? He had been trained to face threats, to stand his ground no matter the odds. But this was different. These weren't enemies flying recklessly into their skies. These were professionals calm deliber,